Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Always a pleasure to be here. We typically present once a year, so this is the time of the year. Ariana Resources PLC. We've been around on AIM for the last, since 2005, operating primarily in Turkey. And we've developed the company from grassroots exploration all the way through to a producing gold and silver asset. And just sort of developing some of the themes that were picked up in the vast presentation by Andrew, I just want to draw your attention to that ring, producer, explorer, developer. Imagine a three-legged stool. When you're building a mining enterprise, you can't have two legs. The whole thing will topple over. It's essential to develop various aspects of that full cycle. You can't imagine a major mining company that does no exploration. It always has to replace reserves. So exploration is always ongoing. And of course, with development of new assets. And what we can show today is aspects of all of these themes. We've got a producing asset, which I'll talk about later in the presentation, but what I want to talk about first is our most exciting exploration play at this point in time, which is up in northeastern Turkey. So first of all, just show you where we are in Turkey. Our primary producing asset is Area 2, which I'll talk about later. And the exploration play that I'll focus on initially is the Salinbas Project area, Area 1, up in the northeast, not far from the Georgian border. But also, why are we in Turkey in the first place? Well, Turkey is the premier gold producer in Europe. It far outstrips the production of any other nation in Europe. You can see the production rates there of Finland, Sweden, Bulgaria, and Spain. So Turkey producing last year about 30 tons of gold. And in fact, it's exceeded that in prior years as well. We are the 10th operating mine in the country. And our mine is 50% owned by our project partners, Presea Construction. So here we are up in northeastern Turkey, very mountainous terrain there. The exploration drilling team focused on the Salinbas drill out, which I'll talk about a little further. We're focused on what we refer to as the hot gold corridor. Where this gets its name is the Hot Maden gold discovery, copper gold deposit to be precise, which is in the far southern end of this corridor, down here. Some of you may remember the story of Hot Maden, discovery from a couple of years ago by the Lydia Mariana joint venture in Turkey. And of course, the Mariana share being bought out earlier this year, 30% share in that project being bought out for $175 million. So that gives you a sense of what projects of this nature command in terms of project value. Notably, that was an early stage exploration project, inferred indicated resources, very much like the resource base that we have at Salinbas Ardala, also inferred indicated for about 1 million ounces. That resource is split between the Salinbas area, which is here, and the Ardala copper gold porphyry, which is over here. But we hold this whole area under license at this time. We believe that Salinbas is company transformative and represents significant upside. We completed a scoping study on the project in 2015, demonstrating the core economic elements to this project. A mine life demonstrated at 10 years, producing at a rate of potentially 50,000 ounces of gold a year. The project was previously held in joint venture with Eldorado Gold, and prior to that with European Goldfields. They had 51% stake in that project. We acquired their 51% stake at the very end of last year. And since then, we've gone through a process of getting the company structure in place for us to enable exploration to continue during the course of this year. We acquired that in exchange for a 2% net smelter return royalty. So the hot gold corridor remains relatively underexplored. A lot of the exploration that was undertaken by the joint venture from around 2008 right the way through to the end of 2016 focused primarily in the Ardalı-Salinbas area up here. Virtually no exploration was undertaken through the rest of the corridor. So that's something that we wanted to address early on, and we set about our exploration during the course of this summer season to commence that work. And we've identified a number of other targets that are scattered through from the south of Salinbas all the way through this license and into the southernmost license, and indeed recognizing the continuity of very much the same geology and same structures that are hosting the Hot Maden copper-gold system. So we've demonstrated from recent work that this area has the potential to host multi-million ounce deposit discoveries, evidence from the likes of Hot Maden, but a number of other deposits that have been discovered in the region in relatively recent times, such as Kiziltepe, which is one of the most astounding gold deposits in Turkey. That will be going into production. That's just on this hill over here. So that's only about a year away from production. And indeed other VMS systems like Murgul that have been in production through the Turkish government for very many years. So it's a prolific mineral province in Artvin, and probably the most important province in Turkey to date from an exploration and development point of view. So what I want to share with you today, and this is the most exciting sort of hot off the press results coming out of our exploration that we announced on Tuesday of this week, very much demonstrating and underscoring our belief that we're on to something big here at Salinbas and Ardalı. Again, I'll draw your attention to the Ardalı porphyry. It's a very much cartoon type drawing, this one. We simplified all the geology, but that's the Ardalı porphyry shown in pink. That is an exceptionally rich copper-gold molybdenum system. Some of the gold grades that we're seeing in that porphyry are truly astounding over significant intercept lengths. 135 meters at over 2 grams per ton gold is one example. And indeed other intercepts that also reflect that. We believe that the Salinbas deposit, which we discovered in the early days of the joint venture, although the deposit discovery was up here on the hill, we've actually drilled out towards the porphyry, and it looks like the Salinbas gold-silver system eventually merges into the Ardalı copper-gold porphyry, and indeed was derived from that intrusive source. Ultimately, the metals coming up from the intrusion and then being driven outwards into the surrounding rocks. And our recent exploration has confirmed this belief because we've identified various geological horizons shown in this sort of red dashed line that host potential for other Salinbas-style mineralization. And this is what we're trying to get across here in some of the exploration results that we were able to announce. We've identified a highly significant anomalous zone for both gold and silver, but the whole suite of base metals plus molybdenum. And also in the south, interestingly, we're getting a different suite of porphyry out here that is enriched in rhenium, which is also something that we need to investigate further. But some quite significant gold and indeed base metal results coming from some of the rock chips that we obtained in follow-up to the geochemistry that we completed. So this is showing the soil geochemistry over here. Basically the warmer colors indicating, in this case, higher copper values, and the colder colors indicating lower copper values. So what you can take away from this is this big pink blob, pink and red blob up here. This was an area that was unknown in previous exploration, but the work that we did this year identified this sitting on the flank of the Ardalı porphyry. Out here is the Salinbas ore body, just outlined roughly in red, but note that that sits within a copper low. And that's primarily because Salinbas is a gold-silver deposit, whereas Ardalı itself, and indeed Ardalı North, appear to be a polymetallic system. So that wraps up the results of our latest exploration at the Salinbas Project, which we're very excited about. We're going to continue exploration into next year. The guys are taking a bit of a break now. They've undertaken several months of work, but now that the winter season has set in, snow's falling on the peaks, we're probably out of action there, at least until about April or so of next year. So meanwhile, focus, of course, will continue on our other key asset as a management team, the Red Rabbit joint venture, which we hold in joint venture with Prosea Construction, a very capable construction outfit in Turkey that have been involved in a whole range of construction projects, ranging from building barracks for the Afghan army and police force under a US Army contract, right the way through to building gold and silver processing plants, both in Turkey and abroad. So a very capable outfit. This is a photograph of the very first gold pour that we completed in March of this year. And again, just emphasizing the point made earlier that this is the culmination of a lot of work by the team over very many years to go from grassroots exploration through to developing a resource, to obtaining the finance necessary to go into production, obtaining all the permits from the Turkish government, and then, of course, building the plant over the course of about a year or so, and then eventually going into production. So we've done it before in Turkey. We can certainly do it again, and I'll talk about our next development project towards the tail end of my summary on Red Rabbit. The Kiziltepe gold-silver mine is our producing asset within Red Rabbit. The summary figures shown here are pulled essentially out of our definitive feasibility study that was completed by Tetra Tech in 2013. But we've also identified where there's the opportunity to increase either mine life here, going from 8 years as per the feasibility study, all the way through to 10 years plus based on the latest resource estimation. And indeed, output design rate of about 20,000 ounces gold equivalent per annum, but we're already demonstrating through recent quarterly updates that there's a likelihood that this will increase, and we could potentially take it to about 25,000 ounces of gold per annum as a result of an increase in production output, which was designed at 150,000 tons per annum, but we built in capacity to do more. We've pushed the plant. We know that we can do that now, and so we're now targeting about 180,000 tons of ore per annum. Also, perhaps most importantly, the cash costs, the operating costs of Kiziltepe, predicted at about $600 per ounce for the life of the operation. In the last quarter, we were able to demonstrate we came significantly under that at about $570 an ounce. I won't go through the detail here. There are presentations out to the front. You can look at all the detail on that later. Just quickly flicking through the next few slides. This is the footprint of the Kiziltepe mine site, showing the primary infrastructure. We're currently mining the Arzu South pit. We'll be mining some of these other pits in subsequent years. Over here, we've got the waste rock dump, the tailings dam, and the process plant. And this is how it looks from a drone, looking almost due south. Here is the Arzu South pit. It's about 650 meters long. That's one end of the pit. That's the other end of the pit. Some of those other pits that I outlined, one's out here, and there's a couple on the other side of the hill there. The processing plant, all the blue buildings there, the mine administration buildings here, and the mine contractors buildings over there. So quickly run through some of these points. What's perhaps most important, gross revenue for the joint venture in the last quarter was over $5 million for that period. Certainly at current gold price and silver price, we're expecting that sort of rate to be maintained going forward in the near to medium term. What we're particularly excited about, having relatively recently gone into production, is that our processed gold recoveries are a lot higher than we were predicting from the feasibility. Now, of course, this could change in time. It could average down as a note of caution. But at the moment, we're trending at 95% versus about 86% or so that was predicted in the feasibility study. Also, it's important to note that we've been mining at a much higher rate than was originally planned. And the reason for this is we want to build up a substantial stockpile, particularly in advance of the winter months. We've noticed that heavy rainfall can affect crusher throughput. And as a result of that, the more ore that we can stockpile, the better, and also keeping that ore dry. So we're actually building a roof over our primary stockpile. So we've stockpiled, this figure would have changed now, it'd be about 50,000 tonnes of ore at just over 2 grams per tonne currently. So a substantial reserve representing about 3 months of production if we stopped all production from the pit tomorrow. So quickly on this one, most importantly, the reserve that I talked about sits within the blue pits out here. The red pits are the extended pits based on the optimization studies that we completed most recently on the latest mineral resource. The vein system we've proven through drilling does actually continue all the way through and underneath this hill or cap rock sequence shown in this turquoise color. So further drilling in the future by the joint venture, I'm sure will indicate there's more potential there. And we could ultimately in future years consider going underground once we've exhausted the open pits. Most importantly, from that resource update, it was a substantial resource increase, but we've taken the total tonnage to 3.8 million tonnes at substantially over 2 grams per tonne as an overall resource. But of course, our mining grades are higher, trending currently over 3 grams per tonne of gold. Also, there's plenty of other exploration upside, both at Kiziltepe itself, the vein system there. There are a number of other parallel veins that sit in and around here. Some of those have been drill tested only to a marginal degree, but we've completed a JORC exploration target on that, demonstrating that there's further resource upside. And ultimately, when we get around to fully drill testing all of that, I'm sure some of it will come into reserve too. So all of that I've talked about sits down here, this corner of the license at Kiziltepe, but there's a whole bunch of other prospects that are named through here, some of which sit within the JV licenses, but some of which out here sit within 100% owned Ariana licenses. And all of these demonstrate significant potential for further resource growth. And ultimately, all are within trucking distance, and the roads that we'd use for trucking, shown in yellow here, we could truck all of that material down to the Kiziltepe processing plant. So quickly moving on to the Tavşan sector. So this is taken from the scoping study that we completed late last year. Tavşan demonstrating that we've got the opportunity to develop a second asset within the Red Rabbit joint venture, ultimately taking our production rate from 20,000 ounces a year to potentially 50,000 ounces a year over the medium term. This map and image here shows the pits that we've designed for Tavşan so far based on the existing resource, but there's certainly further resource upside, and we'll be undertaking further work on Tavşan during the course of next year. Right now, we're working on a new resource estimate for Tavşan based on the existing drilling and an improved geological understanding. But most importantly, we've got exploration upside that's identified in that cross-section that just sits to the south of the main zone. So we've got the opportunity to expand the resource to the south. Now, there's further work to be done there. We need to undertake additional metallurgical test work and apply for an environmental impact assessment. But all of that work we're planning to commence during the course of 2018 under the auspices of the joint venture. So this is how we envisage the Red Rabbit project coming together in particular, noting Kiziltepe production up here. So this is actual production. We're expecting perhaps up to 12,000 ounces of gold equivalent produced by the end of this year, and then producing at that steady state rate of about 20,000 ounces per year thereafter, albeit that we could potentially increase that, as I noted, to 25,000 ounces in some years. Some of these other projects kicking in, certain work that we need to undertake on those, but also importantly the Tavşan development opportunity and the likely work and timelines associated with that. Ultimately bringing us to an envisaged production rate of 50,000 ounces of gold and gold equivalent per annum. So in summary, perhaps the most important takeaway from the presentation is something that I've emphasized previously at these events, but our historical cost of discovery as a company is $15 an ounce. And that's based on the cost effectively to shareholders of the company. In addition to that, and I'll come on to the next slide in a moment, there have been various other funds that we've drawn on for the development of our various projects. But the most important takeaway is that we add ounces extremely cheaply and certainly a lot less than the global average, which is trending at around $40 an ounce. Obviously, we're very excited by the Salinbas project. It's already got 1 million ounces. I've given perhaps some sense that that could grow and grow substantially based on the latest exploration results. There's further drilling that will need to be undertaken there. We've got to consider how we advance that project, whether we do so in partnership again or we do so in our own right, assuming that we've got sufficient cash flow coming off Kiziltepe to continue funding that in our own capacity. But we've also got other opportunities. We've got access to a Turkey-wide exploration database through Newmont, and we've got shareholdings in a number of junior companies that have done very well in Australia. Of course, we're never going to take our eye off the ball, the production ball at least, in terms of Red Rabbit. Maintaining that production with our partners at Red Rabbit is key. It's key to the company's growth going forward in whatever aspect of further exploration and development work that we undertake. But of course, we've got our eye on that horizon to get ourselves to about 50,000 ounces production per annum. And I'll quickly end on this slide and then go straight to questions. There are actually a couple of other slides behind here, but that just adds just appendix material, gives a flavour of the board structure. Michael de Villiers, our chairman, is here, so you can ask us questions later. But I'll end on this slide, just showing the development of the company from its IPO back in 2005. Here, the growth in resource shown by the circle and how that's split by project. The growth in the market capitalization, which is key. Investor funds coming in through AIM here. And then, most importantly, the significant investment that's come in from our project partners, be it Presea Construction in the case of Red Rabbit, be it in the case of Salinbas with Eldorado Gold and European Goldfields before that, and also bank finance, $33 million to construct the Kiziltepe mine. So, in summary, you get a lot of bang for your buck with Ariana. Thank you.
Question time. Gentleman here first. Oh, we did one at the back first and then come to this gentleman here.
Hello. I was wondering about the political risk, given that Erdogan seems to be on a bit of a roll these days.
Political risk, I think all observers of Turkey will say that political risk has eased off. Obviously, the coup attempt was cause for concern, but that was quickly put to bed. There are other issues that Turkey's facing politically and other headwinds given its geographical location. But certainly as a sector, mining sector, yes, we've gone through some difficult times in the last few years, and we as a company have suffered as a result of that. But I would say that right now we're in a very interesting space for Turkey, and there have been recent changes to mining legislation in terms of the regulations to the mining law recently being published as of about a month ago. Various other laws that are being passed by Parliament that are going to end up being very beneficial for our industry, at least, and indeed others. And the government is pulling out all the stops to make sure that it continues to attract significant foreign investment, which hasn't really waned, irrespective of any perceived risks that are out there.
Gentleman just here.
Are you subject to any international restriction for production of gold?
No, there's no restriction through the Turkish government. In fact, the Turkish Central Bank will become the first buyer of gold as of early next year. So we will receive spot, but the Turkish bank will buy all Turkish gold production going forward.
Well, the gold is only valuable because of its rarity. It hasn't got much intrinsic use. That's what I'm driving at.
Well, obviously in the Turkish environment, it's got a lot of intrinsic use, and that's jewellery manufacture.
That intrinsic use.
Well, it is a use and an important use of gold, and people value it. Yeah, yeah.
Time for one more question. The lady in the front here.
The lady in front, the lady in front.
No, I'm just wondering what's going to happen if the price of gold continues going down, and where is your...
Okay, we took a very conservative approach to our feasibility study, and the open pits were designed at $1,054 US per ounce. So the engineering limits, effectively, could take us comfortably to that limit. We'd be break even. Well, we'd probably do better, actually, given the drop in the oil price. But essentially, it's break even at about $1,000 an ounce. So we can tolerate lower prices. At current price, we're very comfortable indeed.
Thank you, Kerim. Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Thank you.